this disease is horrible. I mean, there was a gentleman that I took classes with, and one day he was there, and then the next day he was still there, but he couldn't communicate.
Mm-hmm.
And can you tell us a little about the hallucinations that he was having?
Well,
And I would sing with him old TV theme songs, and all of a sudden he would sing with me, and he was back. And then as soon as we finished, poof, he was gone. This is
yeah, well, cognition is a major problem for Parkinson's patients, and it's a major problem. I mean, when you look at the incidence of Alzheimer's disease in this country and cognitive decline, I mean, it's awful to say, but one of the best investments if you're making a stock play is memory care. And doesn't that say a lot for where we are in terms of aging well in our country, right? But remember that Parkinson's disease is a disease of the brain to a certain extent. That has features all over the body. So the reason why the person might recognize songs and sing with you and then just retreat back to the old state is that the ability to initiate that kind of thing goes away over time. And the hallucinations come about because of the effect on the brain. So unfortunately, hallucinations are a major part of the condition, and it can be one of the contributing factors to why the person can't stay in his or her own home anymore, because it becomes increasingly difficult for, just think about the things we've been talking about here. You've got urinary incontinence, and you've got hallucinations and loss of cognition. The person will get to the place where they can't be left alone and can do very little for themselves, and it becomes very, very taxing for the family. But these are all just normal things to be expected as the disease progresses, and one of the reasons why you want to do as much as you can early stage to keep it from getting worse for as long as you possibly can.
Thanks very, very much for that, Pam. And Ravendra is back for another one. So let's go ahead and unmute her. Welcome back, Ravendra.
Yeah, no, I just in relation to, like you mentioned, acupuncture helps. Would hypnosis help?
I don't think so. And one of the reasons I say that is, first of all, I've not found anything that shows that it helps, and it doesn't. I can't imagine what the mechanism of action would be. And there has to be a mechanism of action, right? I mean, I don't think it would hurt to try it, but I would be surprised if it helped, because it basically doesn't solve the problems that we're trying to solve, which is, the blood-brain barrier and the gut microbiome and that sort of thing. Having said that, there are some things that I don't spend much time talking people out of, because you never know, and there's not much harm in trying. Unlike drugs, drugs and surgery, there's always a downside, and sometimes the downside is pretty frightening. But if you were to take a family member for a couple of hypnosis sessions, worst case scenario is it may not work.
So Pam, that is actually the last of the raised hands that I see right now. But if it's okay, I want to take this in as well. I was just going to say
more.
Like direction, but we've got a few more now. Okay.
All right. I'll happy to take them.
I will table that, and let's go to let's see if I hope I have your name right. Welcome. Toya.
Hi. Nice to be here. I have a question. It's not really about the incontinence. It's about I get a lot of UTIs, and I was told I can take the tablets, the cranberry. I wanted to know if I can just do, because I'm plant-based, if I can just do the juice, like the fresh pressed, instead of the tablets.
Yeah, you're much better off with the fresh press. But if you get constant UTIs, that means you probably need to take a strong probiotic, and you have to break the cycle of antibiotics, regardless of whether it's associated with Parkinson's or not. You have to break the cycle of antibiotics, and sometimes we'll use plant antimicrobials in place of antibiotics. And often, if you catch it early enough, you can do that, so you can stop this destruction of the microbiome, which makes it easier to get another infection and so on and so on, because the chronic infections mean something is wrong, and what you want to do is fix it. But yeah, the juice, the actual fresh pressed juice or a juice not from concentrate is much better than taking the tablets.
Thanks, Pam. And we now have, let's see, hopefully I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Is it Kaylee or Kylie?
It's Kaylee. Hi, thank you. Hi, Pam.
Hi.
Hi. Please, if we've determined that the blood-brain barrier is basically broken, it's intruded upon. That's nice. Is there any way to repair it?
Yeah, you stop injuring it. Yeah, I mean, as silly as that sounds, that you stop assaulting it. You do that with changing the diet, improving cardiovascular integrity, which is from changed diet. So yeah, everything is theoretically fixable. The earlier stage it is, the easier it is to fix it. It's like a car. It's easier to maintain a car and to fix minor things that go wrong than it is to wait until the car won't move anymore and then take it in. Bodies are not a whole lot different, but yeah, you can restore integrity to a leaky gut, and you can restore integrity to a blood-brain barrier as well.
Thanks very much for that, Pam. And Ravindra is back. Let's go ahead and unmute you. Welcome back, Ravindra.
Yeah, thank you. The question is, in the acupuncture, the auricular microcurrent acupuncture will do the same as needle or laser or
I think you want the needling. We've had the best experience with acupuncture here in Columbus with using well-trained acupuncturists trained in traditional Chinese medicine. There are two particular practitioners we send people to here in Columbus that do a good job. Having said that, not that this is the same as humans, but I have an almost 18-year-old cat who has a lot of health issues, and he gets acupuncture every other week, and he gets both laser and needles for different things. And the laser seems to have a great effect too. So I'm not a traditional Chinese medicine. I'm not trained in TCM, but I've referred a lot of people to acupuncturists, TCM trained acupuncturists for treatment for a lot of conditions, including Parkinson's.
Thanks very much again for that, Pam. And so, Ravindra's back again. Let's see what you got this time, Ravindra.
Okay. Would the infrared light therapy or microcurrent to the scalp that was developed in Harvard, that you put a helmet which has microcurrent and it stimulates for 30 minutes, their measured amount of amperage and duration of stimulation. And similarly, the infrared, either pads which have less electromagnetic field, or going to an infrared sauna with less electromagnetic field, would that help Parkinson's disease of my partner?
Not that I've seen. Again, there's not much wrong can go with that. But I think the thing you have to be careful of is almost all conditions with severity, like Parkinson's or cancer, you can spend all day running around after alternative treatments. It can be a full-time job. And so most people have limited money. I mean, there's not unlimited funds. Like, we can just chase after everything. We will start at 8 in the morning and we will do every alternative thing we can do. Most people can't do it from a time and money perspective. And the other thing is that you wear out the patient. So I would tell you to focus on things that have been demonstrated to have high impact. Exercise has high impact. And what I would hate to see is somebody sitting in the sauna and going here and there and everywhere. They don't move other than going here, there, and everywhere. That would be a colossal mistake, in my opinion.
Thanks for that, Pam. And we now have a new question in from Stacy. Stacy, I'm going to unmute you. Welcome, Stacy.
Hi, Pam. Thank you so much for your awesome work, first off. And second off, do you know any benefits of juicing hemp or cannabis leaves for just the balancing of the human body in general?
No. And by the way, balancing the human body is such a general term. If you want to balance the human body, you have to take care of the human body on a daily basis. That's your diet, exercise, water, social interaction, quality of life, purpose, sleep, hydration, all that kind of stuff, right? That's so those are the things that balance your body every day. And if you're going to use something for this would be a medical intervention, what you're talking about, and then you would want a good reason for doing it. In other words, the risks and the benefits weigh out. And also, you know, I'll come back to this too. I've mentioned it a couple times, sort of in passing. And that is the importance of getting people to do things long term. I don't like to see people tied up with busy work because it leads to not, that's the reason I don't push the vegan, because it's not necessary. But the other thing is I am much more interested in something that somebody can do for a long period of time than this short-term burst of hysterical activity that goes away after a while. So I want to use up the compliance genes on the stuff that really matters from a strategy standpoint. I hope that makes sense.
It certainly does, Pam. Thank you very much. And oh, I thought we had somebody, but it looks like, oh, yep, Ben is back. We're gonna have Ben unmute. Hi, Ben, welcome back.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you very much for the time. You talk about water fasting. So how can the patient do the water fasting?
If you're going to use water fasting as a therapeutic, you need to do that in a fasting center. There's several of them around the country now. Fortunately, there are more opening. So you would want to do this in a residential facility. Whether or not a Parkinson's patient can fast is an issue because it depends upon medications and that sort of thing. So not all people are candidates for water fasting. But I've probably sent 500-600 people to fasting facilities during my last 20-some years I've been in business. I'm a fan, but you have to do this in a residential setting for safety purposes, and the patient has to be interviewed for suitability for fasting based on the drugs that they're taking and that sort of thing as well.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that, Pam. Pam, I think that was our last question. I just was wondering if you could touch on something real quick. And I don't remember who it was. Somebody asked you earlier about something and you sort of said, well, I'm not, entirely sure whether I believe in that. Ultimately, what you were saying is you were looking for evidence-based rationale. And so I wonder if you could just touch for a minute before we close, because I know you've spoken about this before, on the importance of evidence-based health information for all of us.
Yeah. So the first thing I want to say is evidence-based is the thing, but the problem is that 95% of what's in medical journals is garbage. So you have to tease out the 5% that isn't. And the way that we went about that when we started a few decades ago, I can't believe I've been at this for a few decades. So now is when you tell me I don't look old enough to be doing this for a few decades, right? But
that's exactly. I was thinking
anyway,
that.
Aside from all that, what we tried to do was to bring some type of order to evaluating information. So we have 19 criteria. I'm not going to list them all here, but we basically look at conflicts of interest, which they almost all have some right now, and selection bias in the cohort, things that are statistically significant but meaningless to the patient. In other words, statistical significance means that it made a difference. But, if you get 5 episodes of chest pain per week instead of 6, does that change your life? No. So why bother? The risk-benefit ratio, we look at number needed to treat data. The confusion between correlation and cause and effect relationship. I mean, the whole vitamin D hysteria is based on converting a correlation to a cause and effect relationship, and there isn't one, as it turns out. It was misinterpreted. So we teach all of our clients how to do this. We teach our health professionals how to do this when they enter training in our school. Because it's like football. I teach their analogy. If you just said, listen, here's how we're going to play football. We're going to have teams show up. They're going to run up and down the football field with a football for an hour, and then we're going to try and figure out who won. my gosh, it'd be total chaos. But because there are rules, the quarters are 15 minutes, the first down is always 10 yards, and to kick a field goal, it goes through the poles, right? The post. All right, so at the end of a season, you can play thousands and thousands of games of football all over the world, and we maybe fuss and argue about 5 plays, 10 plays, 12, maybe, right? Because there are rules. And so the key is to use rules when you're evaluating evidence, so you don't get into the way people usually talk about health, which is, I call it the tribal method. He said, she said. And then I read an article, you read a different one. I saw this book, you read it. I went to this website, you went to a different one. You know, I saw this doctor, you have a different one. And then my uncle's best friend's neighbor's boyfriend's wife says, okay, so you know what I mean? It's hard to make sense of all of that. So I'm looking for high impact stuff. You know, when I mentioned before about some of these are complicated diseases, and people have so much time, so much money, and so much patience in some cases. So you better make sure that the things that you're doing really matter, so that you don't waste a whole lot of time on stuff that doesn't, just exhaust yourself without really making any progress. Because then, particularly like with a Parkinson's patient, bringing it back here, you've got a person who may be difficult to motivate in the first place because life is just difficult, right? We don't want to make that any worse. So I hope I answered your question, but.
You did. I know so many of us are probably thinking, okay, so, you know, you have a great way to do that, or as skilled as anybody at doing that. How do we, the lay people, navigate that? And I don't know if you have any other specific suggestions around that. Or...
Well, maybe that'll be one of next year's lectures, is I'll give a talk about how to look at information and interpret it, because it really pertains to everything. But I think here's something I can say that is really helpful for everybody. If you just did nothing else but this until I come back next year, right? So a guy by the name of Dr. Pam Popper, who's not a relation of mine, darn it, because he was so smart, right? I'd love to claim him as a relative. He lived in the UK, and he was the person who pioneered, he was a scientist and philosopher, and he pioneered the idea that you falsify the hypothesis. In other words, what most people do is they hear a new idea and they jump on it. It's the best thing. I'm going to do it. You should do it. Everybody should do it. Whatever it is, right? Okay. So how about if you did it differently? How about if you said, here's a new idea. I'm going to assume that it's false. I'm going to try to prove it false. And if somehow it survives that and it turns out to be true, my gosh, we'll know we're onto something, won't we? Okay. And so I think that one of the biggest problems that people have in trying to sort out health information is that tendency to hear something new and go, that's it, I'm going to do it. Somebody says, go sit in a sauna, I'm going to go do it. Somebody said cancer patients benefit from this, I'm going to go do it. You know, and I understand where that comes from, but that impulsive chasing after everything is exhausting and inexpensive, and it often doesn't lead to very good outcomes. So just take a breath and don't be so quick to jump on everything.